Those of you who attended the forum last year would have heard from two incredible members of staff who spoke to you about this crazy concept of revolutionising the way that we teach our first year. The concept became reality as we launched that new block mode of teaching in February of this year, and it's made a profound effect on student satisfaction, on pass rates, and the way that Victoria University is placed in the world of higher education. So to speak further on this, I'll warmly welcome Ian Solomonides, our Vice President of Learning and Teaching, and Andrew Smallridge, who is our Dean of our first year college, to speak with you about the success of our first year college.
Thank you very much, and good morning and welcome to you all. As you've just heard, my name is Ian Solomonides. I'm the Vice President for Learning and Teaching. I've got with me Andrew Smallridge, the Dean of the First Year College. We are between us responsible and accountable for the implementation of the first year model and the organisation of the First Year College. Oh, okay, the mic's still on? Should be. I'll try this one. Is that better? Yeah, okay, all right. So I'll stay here then. Okay, so I said, my name's Ian Solomonides. I'm accountable in the organisational sense for the first year model in the First Year College, and we have with us the Dean of the First Year College, Andrew Smallridge, who looks after the operations and oversees the quality of courses that are taking place within the First Year College. It doesn't seem like a year ago when we were both stood in front of quite a few of you, I think. I'm guessing there's quite a few of you who were here this time last year, talking about this first year model, talking about block teaching and doing our best to describe something that wasn't yet in operation. We've now had a semester's worth of operation, and we're delighted to report today on how that has been going and the success that we think we've achieved for our students, not only in terms of their pass rates, but also in terms of the quality of the learning that they are achieving. So we've got an opportunity to talk about that this morning, and I believe you've also got an opportunity to talk with some of our first year college staff and also to hear from some of our students after the break. So I think that should be really quite interesting to hear. Okay, so where should we go? This came out at the end of last month. You may have seen this report in The Age. It was reported quite widely across Fairfax. Could this be the secret for improving university student grades? Victoria University students will no longer juggle multiple university subjects at the same time. Last year we described this to you. We talked about how the experience for many students when they come to university, and you may have experienced this yourselves, either directly or through the experience of others. Often students will come into a university, they will choose 4 subjects, and they will study those subjects concurrently, whilst at the same time having to make the difficult transition from where they've come into university to make friends, to get to know what is required of them, to get to know the rights and rituals of being in university, and everything that goes with it, and it can be quite a difficult time. So it's hardly surprising that we see a lot of our students leaving university across the country within the first 4, 5 or 6 weeks of study. If we get into it a little bit later, we can show you some data about how that has not happened within the first year college. Other reports came out. Block teaching brings better grades. This was in the Australian a few weeks back. What really you want to focus on here is this stuff down on the right-hand side. You can see how, compared with 2017 and 2018, the fail rates and withdrawal rates have dropped off very significantly. And the grades towards the other end have moved up one. We think around a standard deviation. Okay. So that's quite a significant difference. Of course, we've done this by dropping standards and making the assessments easier. We haven't at all, and we can show you some data a little bit later that compares directly units that were taught last year with units that were taught this year, using exactly the same assessment methods, and we can show how these grades have improved. So I talked earlier about this traditional model of teaching and learning in higher education. You would have seen something like this, I think, last year, if you were here. The student experience, as I've already mentioned, is rather high stakes. It can be quite confusing with many demands and tasks asked of those students. The model itself, though, is incredibly resilient. It's quite robust and it's very difficult to change. And believe me, I cannot tell you how many variables we've had to change, both internally and externally. Either our internal rules and regulations, our external rules and regulations, the acceptance of professional bodies, and a wide range of other stakeholders in order to get this off the ground. I've lost 10 kilos. I have lost 10 kilos. So it's a rather passive model as well. Many of you will be familiar with this idea that a lot of education, particularly in those first years of higher education, is very transmissive and broadcast model. Yeah? It's often in rooms like this, where the sage on the stage will pour content, like concrete, over the first year students in front of them. The workload, therefore, is tied up in that traditional model. It's about content, it's about lectures, it's about seminars, and it's about tutorials, often with assignments at the end of all of that, and maybe some exams, over a period of about 16 weeks. That makes that transition to university difficult, slow, and somewhat impersonal. And it's really down to luck as to whether or not you will make friends early, whether you'll get to know the students that will support you, really, through the rest of your study. Because that's really the thing that gets students through university, is the other students that support. So, this is what we moved to. We changed, we took those 16 weeks, and we said rather than delivering those 4 things concurrently, let's deliver them sequentially. Let's get students to engage with them, one thing at a time. So now our students come to this university being able to focus on one thing at a time in an immersive and deep kind of way. We've managed to consolidate the timetable. So our students are only expected to be in the university 3 days of each week, and for selective periods within those 3 days, enabling them to do many of the other things that they have to do in their very busy lives. Many of our students, for example, have a number of dependencies. They might work, they might be carers, they might be parents, they might be all 3 of those things. So we try to create a timetable that would give them the space to be able to do that other stuff. The assessment is contained within the 4 weeks. So at the end of those 4 weeks, you do your assessment. We mark and moderate that assessment. In fact, there's moderation going on as we speak. And students will find out whether or not they have passed that unit no later than the Tuesday.
No, it's Monday lunchtime.
Monday lunchtime of the following week. That's very motivating. Because if you've been in this university for 4 weeks and you've passed the unit already, whilst your colleagues at other universities are still waiting 13, 14, 15 and 16 weeks to find out, we all know success breeds success. The more you have it, the more you want it. And most importantly, we've created this suite of what we call complementary activities to enhance knowledge and skills. There are other universities that use this block model, particularly in North America and to some extent in Sweden. Andrew and David, here in the front row, and other colleagues went over to visit those, and we came back with some very important findings. One of which is that you need to change the seeking behaviour of students around things like study skills or literacy support, mathematical, academic, whatever it may be, from a pejorative and remedial thing to a normalised behaviour. So we've created this extensive suite of complementary activities that support our students as they progress through their first year. And again, we've got some more details on what they are and how that works if we get into it. Okay, so we've bottled all that up in a very short video here. I'll just get this playing and I'm going to hand over to Andrew, who'll talk you through a little bit more.
We've been teaching the same way for hundreds of years now, but the world around us has changed, and along with it, employer and industry needs. So at VU, we changed the way you learn with our Australia First year model. Traditionally, you juggle the demands and deadlines of 4 units at once. Instead, the first year model has you focus on 1 unit at a time. Your first year will be broken into 2 semesters. Each semester will be broken into 4 blocks, which run for 4 weeks. You focus on 1 unit in each block, completing all your assessments before moving on to the next. So instead of this, your first year looks like this. The first year model offers you flexible study options, support from 1 teacher per unit, and practical hands-on teaching methods that prepare you for your future. So when you study at VU, you know you'll gain the support and skills you need to succeed.
Yeah, thank you and welcome. It's amazing how we've sort of bottled 12 months worth of work into 60 seconds there. But I think that's a really, really good video that explains an awful lot of what we set out to do and why we set out to do it. And that video is available on our website. If any of you want to get the links, we can organise that for you going along. But it summarises very, very nicely exactly what we've done. And as Ian said, today is the final Friday of the final block of semester 1. So all of the first year college staff are actually busy getting their results finalised and moderated as we speak, and we will have it done by the end of the day, and then we all celebrate. So it was called the final Frantic Friday, but as someone said to me from the college today, they said it's sort of moved to a relatively busy Thursday. So things have moved on, and we've done, I think, very well in getting this set up in the period of time that we've had. So let me just summarise a little bit, and some of this you will have seen last year. So it's a 4-week block. 4 weeks, we have 11 days of classes in that 4 weeks. So in the final week, we only have 2 days of classes. We have 3 days of classes in the first 3 weeks, 2 in the final week, and that is purely so that we have time to finalise all of the assessments that needs to take place. Plus, it gives the students a little bit of a break before they start the next one. So they get 3 face-to-face per week, each of them of 3 hours. Now, for units that have laboratories, science, health, sport, engineering, then they have more than 3 hours a day, but it's always on the 3 days. And the other thing that doesn't happen is you no longer will have a 9 till 11 lecture and a 4 till 5 tute, where the students then pick which of those 2 they really want to go to because they can't be bothered staying around all day. So if it's 3 hours, then it might be 9 till 12, 3 days a week. If there's labs, then if you have a 9 till 12 class, the labs will usually run 1 till 3 straight afterwards, all on the same days. So we never have students doing 5 days a week anymore. We never have those split classes beginning, end. You never have like, oh, I've got a 1 till 2 class on a Friday and it's my only Friday class. So none of that happens anymore. We've really fixed all of those sorts of things. We do have, it's 3 hours face-to-face, but behind all of that, we have our learning system. We have blended learning that goes in there. We have our complementary activities that Ian talked about. Every unit has a defined complementary activity, which is linked into one of the assessment tasks, so the students get extra skills around completing that assessment task. And it's been quite interesting that in some of the early blocks, we had students who had an assessment task in week 1. They then had the complementary activity early in week 2 and did a very similar assessment task at the end of week 2 to what they'd done in week 1. And the change in quality was significant. We had staff going, you could see the student going from something they weren't sure about to gaining some skills to then being able to do much better at it. And so I think we've really done very well with these complementary activities and linked them in so the students can see how they gain skills. And the idea is that they then know that when they need to get a skill, where to go. We have small class sizes. We've averaged 35, which may not sound small, but let me give you an example. We took in 700 nurses in first year this year. Last year, we would have had possibly one, maybe two lecture theatres with at least 350 students coming to that class. Now, your first day at a university, walking into a class of 350 students, to say it's a little daunting is probably a bit of an underestimation. Instead, this time they walked into a class of 35. They saw the same 35 students 3 days a week for 4 weeks. By the end of that time, they had got friends. They knew everybody in the class, and the staff member knew everyone. Very, very easy for the students. It was quite difficult for us having 20 different classes of 35 students, but we got there. But you can see the difference that makes, and that was across the whole university for those first year students. Day one, they walked into a class of no more than 35 students. And as I said, the academic staff were there, same academic staff member for the whole 4 weeks. So they interacted with that one person. And we found that's had a profound impact on a lot of things. Our applications for special consideration have plummeted because students interact with that staff member 3 days a week. If they've got a problem, they tell the staff member and we get it sorted out there and then. The applications from students who are trying to submit 4 assignments all in the same week and they don't think they're going to do it, so they put in a special consideration, can I get an extension? Doesn't happen anymore because they've only got one thing to do. So that sort of student well-being side of things has also changed because of this close contact with the academics and creating that sort of personal relationship from day one. We get feedback. If you see someone 3 days a week, they're going to talk to you. Your academics giving you feedback all the time. You want to ask questions, then it happens regularly. And staff are saying we don't get as many emails from students anymore because a student doesn't need to send an email saying, what do I need to do? Because they'll see them tomorrow. So a whole range of things like that, that student experience has really changed. And because we're in small classes of 35, there's a lot more collaborative learning. We've changed the way in which we do it. We don't have lectures. We have a lot of collaborative learning, a lot of group work, a lot of students teaching students. And that's really been a big emphasis. And again, that creates a safe environment for the students. And we've had numbers of students say, you know, I feel I can talk in the class. You know, normally in a lecture, you could go weeks and weeks without anybody actually ever saying anything. And there might be some students who never talk throughout a whole semester. Whereas in this, we're engaging them and they're talking straight away. Just a few other points. We set up the motto of the first year college, succeed and excel. And that's what we set out to do. So our students can succeed. They can pass, and we've seen a big increase in our pass rate, so students are exceeding. But as we saw from that other graph, not only are they exceeding, they are excelling. They are able to reach more of their potential. And if you read the article in The Age, there was a quote from a student there, a law student who started mid-year. Last year they did the 4 units concurrently. Now they're doing the block mode. And her comment was, my grades have gone up. And she had 2 reasons why those grades had gone up. One was because everything she had learned, she knew related to that unit she was doing. Now, particularly in law, you read a lot of material in law, and then you get to the stage and you go, now, did that case apply to this unit or to that unit? In physics, now, was that equation here or was that a maths equation? So now everything you do, you know relates to that subject. So we no longer get answers on exam papers or assignments which have clearly come from some other unit. And the other thing she said was, I have more time to prepare because it's all it is. So I'm able to look at what is actually needed and tailor my answers to what was asked rather than what I thought was being asked. And so that's part of all these things, about immersing yourself, about learning through the interactive activities, about getting to know the academic, the educator that's doing it. All of these things have had a profound impact, and it's come and demonstrated and come out with this increase in the success and the excellence of our students. We've had numbers of staff who have said, I'm at the end of 4 weeks, and this was the really interesting thing, 4 weeks into the semester, students had to put submissions in for their assessment and that. And we were getting assessment and material from students after 4 weeks in the university that far exceeded anything first year students had ever done in that unit previously. And some of it, the staff were saying, that's at the sort of second year level that I was expecting. That's after 4 weeks just by immersing them in this area. And I think I can't underestimate that bottom sentence that we said there. We set up a first year college to teach the first year students. And I'm very fortunate to be the dean of that college, and I have a group of staff that were specifically recruited to teach first year students. And they do all of the first year teaching across the entire university, and they're a fantastic group of staff. And again, having that dedicated group that just focus on first year, they know what first year students need, the special challenges of them, that has also made a big impact on a lot of the things that we do. So I've got another little video, because you can listen to me and you can listen to Ian, but let's see what the students are actually saying about their experience in the first couple of blocks.
I expected uni to be just kind of throwing you in the deep end, but I found that, well, at Vic Uni, it was actually pretty different.
I was really expecting to be overwhelmed, and it hasn't been overwhelming at all.
I'm gonna do this, I can do this, you know, I can balance this. I don't need help from no one, I don't need support from anyone, I can do it on my own. So it's been very good in that sense.
It is only 3 days a week, so it's just been really easy to slip it into my life without feeling like I've changed my entire life to work around uni.
There's one class to focus on, so you can really commit to that class and you're not having to deal with 5 or 6 other classes at one time.
I think it's really helpful, it will be helpful to get feedback every 4 weeks instead of just sort of walking in blindly to exams. Yeah, and we've been getting feedback as well on the assessments that we've already done.
You really can thoroughly understand the curriculum, and the knowledge that's, you know, given to you, especially as a law student, it really allows for that immersive learning experience.
Instead of having the lecture and tutorial format, you're always with the same teacher in a sort of a seminar setup, which so far I've found has allowed me to, I think, progress in areas that I actually need to learn about a lot more effectively. So I suppose tailor-made teaching.
So my teacher's quite young, and he's actually changed the whole structure of our lessons to suit what he thinks our learning style is. So he likes to get us engaged more.
It's way easier to make friends this way because the classrooms are quite small too, and with the way the classrooms are very interactive, you're constantly like discussing with other people.
You're always surrounded by people who are willing to help you, like in terms of peers and students.
The general feeling of the first year model, and the only word that comes to mind is I'm happy. I'm relaxed, I'm not stressed.
And I think it really suited me, and luckily I'm now 3 weeks in, and yeah, it's pretty great. It's perfect.
So I thought we'd put a few other quotes up here from some of the students. I mean, obviously, as everybody does, we survey our students and we get as much feedback as we can, and some of it is within the class and some of it is external and anonymous. But one of the things that I found most interesting was at the end of the first week, our students then went off and partied with their friends over the weekend, and they talked to all their friends who'd been at other universities. And they came back and started talking to us about how that first weekend after being here. And, their friends were saying, oh, yeah, I had 4 lectures. They told me the same thing, all about, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and all that. And we're saying, oh, no, I've finished the first assessment, I got a credit on the first one, so that was really good. And their friends were sort of going, how does that work? We're still trying to work out what the subjects are, where the rooms are, and all those sorts of things. But there's some other quotes up there. I'll leave you to learn, though, to read those. We thought we'd take a bit of a pause here and answer some questions. And see what else you'd like to know about it, and then we've got some other information if it comes up in the questions. We've got some microphones so that people can hear, and we'll take those around.
Just a couple of questions. The first one is, if the positives of this block teaching model significantly outweigh the negatives, as you suggest, why not use it for the whole course? And the
You should mention that.
And the second, should I ask the second question? Sure. Second question is, surely there are some negatives. For example, being able to juggle several tasks at once is one of the important life skills, and they're missing out on this. And the second one is, longer you spend on a topic, the deeper the embedded learning is. And the third negative, I would think, is that in most universities there is horizontal integration as well, not just vertical integration. So what is needed in a subject is covered partly by another subject, for example. So how are you dealing with these negatives?
There's a wide range of questions there. We've heard them all before and responded in a variety of ways. To take your first question, yeah, if this is good for the first year, why isn't it good for every other? And that is indeed what we're doing. Okay, so we're now rolling this block model out across our entire bachelor offerings. So these first year students will go through into a similar kind of model in the second and then subsequent years after that. The question around integration between subjects, in particular the juggling of demand, is an interesting one. It presupposes that just because we have put 4 subjects alongside each other, that students are engaging with each one of those in exactly the same kind of way. I can assure you they do not. I've been researching teaching and learning, in particular how students learn in higher education for 26 years now. And I can tell you that students are very instrumental. They will select what effort they put into one subject compared to another subject, often trying to pick up the clues and cues about what's going to be in the assessment. Is this going to, you've done it yourself, is this going to be in the exam? Yeah? Am I going to get tested on this? Right. So moving into this block model actually does create a more deep form of learning. And in fact, you can't adopt an instrumental and a memorization kind of approach to learning and teaching in this kind of way. It also, assuming that concurrent stuff denies the opportunity to build those kinds of tasks into the units themselves. So Andrew will describe, I'm sure, how our students do in a wide variety of tasks, how they have to work collaboratively, how they have to deal with a wide range of different types of knowledge, to negotiate meaning with other students, to submit 2 or 3 different types of artifacts before they do something in the end. That sounds like a lot like work to me. And of course, they're juggling the demands that they have outside of university as well. I went to Medibank down in Docklands a couple of weeks ago to talk to a colleague over there, not about this, but we got up talking about it. And they said that's exactly how we work. In a modern firm like this, we work in sprints, often 4-week sprints around a particular task. And of course, we're doing a lot of work in terms of designing what's happening in one unit compared to another unit, a warm handover between those units, the opportunity for tasks and activities to follow the student through.
No, look, that's exactly right. So in some instances, students do units in a particular sequence. And so they are then able to take something that they have learnt and apply it in the next one and in the next one. So engineering's not a bad example of that. So for example, they do 4 weeks of maths. They then take what they've learnt there and they do 4 weeks of physics. And then the final subject in the semester is what is called engineering problem solving. And so they've built their skills up individually. Now, if they do those 4 units, or those 3 units all at the same time, they're trying to learn all of that at the same time. And sometimes that doesn't work, obviously. And in terms of learning to juggle things, when you have 4 subjects all happening at the same time, and you've got 4 things to do, and you come home from uni and you go, will I do maths? No, I'll do physics. Oh no. Do the problem solving? Oh, I don't think so. I'll watch the football. Right? And it's not due till next week, so I'll do it some other time. But what happens now is you come home, you've only got one thing to do, and it's due tomorrow. So you can't procrastinate. You can't put it off. So we are actually teaching students time management skills better this way than we were before, because they weren't having any time management skills there. They just put everything off until they could do it no longer. And the other bit is that, you know, have I got to do maths? You've got the business thing. I've got to do business stats. So what do? You focus on the other bits that you like and you leave business stats behind. And then you get to the end of the semester and go, I don't know anything. Whereas now, okay, you may not like business stats. Put up with it for 4 weeks and move on. And that's all you've got to do, you know? Supposing you just, you know, I don't like the way this staff member teaches me, but I've got to put up with it for 12 weeks. Now, oh look, 4 weeks' time I'll move on to the next person, it'll be all right. So a lot of those assumptions about what happens traditionally, I think we're showing don't, and actually happen better this way. And that deeper engagement question, I've had students come and say, this is just not working for me. 4 weeks is not long enough to learn this. And you know what they're really telling me? I can't memorise this in 4 weeks. It will take me at least 12 weeks to memorise this. And that's how I've always got through uni or through high school. And what we're saying is don't memorise it, understand it. And 4 weeks is more than enough to understand what we're trying to teach, because it's about learning, not about teaching. And that's, so the deeper, we always get this, in 4 weeks you can't get to the depth that you will, but you're only doing one thing. You're focusing on it 3 days a week. Yeah, of course, we can get the depth, and the students are clearly demonstrating a much, much deeper understanding of what they've done than they have before.
Hi, could you tell us a little bit more about the complementary activities that run with the course?
Yes?
Yeah. Yes.
This one we prepared earlier.
We've actually, we looked around for, you know, something that is being discussed quite a lot at the moment. Future skills, 21st century skills. Many of you would have seen the kind of reports that are coming out of the Foundation for Young Australians, so on and so forth, about the kind of things that we need for a future that doesn't exist yet. And we've heard all of that, you know, students will have 17 jobs in their career, a job that hasn't been invented yet. Half of the stuff that they learn will be out of date by the time that they finish their degree. So we're putting a lot of effort into these literacies, competencies and character qualities that employers seem to demand and that students will require throughout their lives. We just happened to settle on this one from the World Economic Forum. It's got good kind of face validity, it's easy for people to understand and so on. So we've taken these 18, I think it is 16, literacies, competencies, qualities, added a couple. We've put in entrepreneurship into there. We run a minor, for example, in entrepreneurship at this university now. We have entrepreneurs in residence who work with our students who might have a good idea, so on and so forth. And we've operationalized it through an app, actually an app that our students built for us. So we worked with some lead users to say, how is this going to work for you? And what you can see here is a step through of this particular app. students are able to access, for example here, global skills. They can log into that using their own identifier. Each one of them has a barcode. They can then access a number of different workshops, online resources, or whatever it may be. Okay, and having worked through those, they're able to achieve a level of competence within that. We're currently talking about bronze, silver, and gold, but we might change that. And we're doing this because we're working through a industry recognised badge system. Some of you will have heard of Mozilla Open Badges. Credly is another clearinghouse that enables us to award students something that can go directly into their LinkedIn profile. Okay, so this is not only getting them to engage with these complementary activities, it's actually giving them something as a consequence of that beyond doing better in their studies. Do you want to say anything else about complementary?
I guess, as I said, we have one activity per unit that we sort of call mandatory, and it links to an assessment task. So for example, if they've got to do a group presentation, then we might get them to do presentation skills as the complementary activity. Or we might get them to do some, PowerPoint skills. What does a good PowerPoint look like? We do group skills. If they've got to do a poster, we can give them some graphic skills. We've got digital literacy skills. So we have a range of different skills. We do numeracy and we do literacy for people who've got to write assignments and to do maths problems and things like that. So we've built some around assessment tasks, the common ones. And again, we try and give students 8 different ones across their 8 units in terms of the way we do that as well.
Are these measured, assessed?
They're not formally assessed in terms of they will go to the learning hub that we've set up in the library and they will do the activity that is there. There is no assessment associated with that activity, but as I said, it feeds into an assessment in the unit. And so it is assessed by default in terms of it comes out in their assessment task that they've done. So that's how it's done from that way. But we do track who attends so that at the end of it they do get some recognition of the fact that they have actually attended and engaged, but we're also, by linking it into assessment tasks, it works from there.
Yeah, I'm just curious to know, if a student fails the first unit, does that lead to them dropping out? Or, I know there's a small rate to drop out, but what's the impact on the student who fails it initially?
It's a really good question, and one of the beauties of the block model is that that unit then runs again. And so we've had students who failed a unit in block 1, and it ran again in block 3, and they've picked it up in block 3 and they've passed it. And the biggest impact this has made is in some of the units or courses where there is placement. And nursing is a really good example of this, in that you have certain prerequisite units you must pass before you can go out on placement, or you can do some of the other units. And in previous years, if you failed those prerequisite units, you were kind of stuck, because in many instances they didn't run again until the following year. Whereas what we've done this year is that they run again the next block. And so we've got students who failed and they've picked it up in the next block. We've also got some units running in the winter block, which starts on Monday, again, so that students can pick up these things. And we've found that the students don't drop out because they don't have to wait an extended period of time to do it. They can repeat it virtually straight away. And so we've got students who have failed this unit, which is a prereq. They've been able to pick it up again and continue progressing in through the course. And that, we have found, has also had a big impact. And we've done a lot of data analysis. We've got a very complicated looking graph that actually shows how students who fail one unit are able then to succeed in the next one and carry it through from there. And I guess they learn a lot in that 4 weeks. And the block allows them to learn that lesson quickly. And after 4 weeks, they go, oh, I should have done that. I'll do it in the next block. Rather than at the end of the semester going, oh, I wish I'd known that.
One of the, with an eye to the future, we're also starting to contemplate what a block schedule might do or not do in terms of the agrarian semester system. Why do we have semesters? And why do we have them in the year, in the period of the year that we have them? Right? You know, it's based on a very archaic model where, you know, everybody went out into the fields to harvest and so on. So there's no real evidence that a semester is any better than anything else. Right? Indeed, there's no real evidence the block is. They are simply different. But what we are finding with the block, and what other universities find with the block, is their students do better. Okay, and we've got the evidence to show you that. One other thing that we're starting to think about is, well, you know, if this is possible, we could have blocks that run extensively throughout the year. And you can start then to think about enrolling at different points in the year to suit the student. In fact, we had some students enroll in Block 3. We were able to open up enrolments in Block 3 of this year. We expected 30 students. We got 143. So that's where we're going with this. We're rolling it out into subsequent years, and we're thinking about extending this across the year as well. We might just show you this, this graph, and I'll let Andrew talk to this one.
Okay. So this is tracking our student enrolments at first year. So these are our commencing students. These are students who started across the university in the first year of a bachelor's degree this year. And the blue line is last year, and the orange line is this year. And you can see that at about week 1 of semester 1, we had roughly the same number of students. And that sort of initial drop there, they're the students who enrolled but never really came. So they've gone somewhere else, they got another offer and they didn't withdraw. So we never had a chance to engage with them. But what that orange line does show is that once those students have come into the first year and engaged with it, they're not leaving. You can see that there's a steady trickle on that blue line that keeps going roughly through until about week 6 or 7. The students are struggling and they're going. So even the students who aren't succeeding in that first block are not leaving, they are there. And you can see that at the end of it, we've got 200 students more this year that have stayed. So that's 200 students who've succeeded this year that wouldn't have done last year. And I think that's, again, a really important message. So even the students who've struggled, you can see they're hanging in there because they can see light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay, we're coming to the end of the time that we have allotted. If there's any one, yeah, okay. Final questions?
Hi, this is Rita from Bendigo Senior College. It's really, good to see these graphs and, these explanations. Thanks for that. 2 questions. One, what would happen if a student comes in a little bit late in second week of the block? And I know that happens because late enrolment and all sorts of things. So can they pick up that, that unit? I forgot my second question, but so, if you can just ask that one, thank you.
Okay. Well, yeah, we do have quite a few students who turn up late. And what we find is that, yeah, if you miss a week in a block, then it is an issue. But the point is that the blocks run every 4 weeks. And so we've had students who come in and we say, well, look, we'll do some other little bits and pieces, but you can start in block 2. Okay? And they do that. Then they'll pick up a unit in winter or in the summer semester, and they still manage to keep going and do that. And we've had students who didn't start until block 2. And as Ian said, we had students who started in block 3, and by allowing them to do winter and summer, they're still going to have finished first year in time to commence semester 2. So it's that ability to repeat things. Because we have smaller classes, we repeat classes far more often. So a lot of that disappears, those issues.
Hi, I was wondering if you could tell me how students pay. Is it per block or per semester? The cost is exactly the same, but we have a census date for every unit. So the census date is the Monday of the second week, and so a student pays per block in terms of census. So that's the other thing, is that, you know, if a student does 6 weeks under the old system and then something happens to them and they can't continue, they've passed the census date and it's cost them 4 units. In this one, okay, same thing happens at week 6. They've already completed 1 unit and succeeded in it, so they haven't lost anything there. And okay, they've paid for a unit maybe that they weren't able to complete. But the cost for students who struggle is different. And then also for a student who has to, you know, something happens and they have to drop out, well, they can drop out for block 2 and come back in block 3 and keep going, and they've only lost 1 unit. Whereas if something happens and a student's away for 4 weeks in the old system, they've lost the whole semester. So there are also advantages in that. But in terms of payment, there's a census date at the end of at the beginning of week 2 for each block, and that's when the student gets charged.
Okay, we've got one last question and then we're going to have to wrap up.
Thank you. For some of these courses now, these are the students who didn't require an ATAR score for entry. Do you have any evidence, any anecdotal, any statistics, just to say how you think those students are coping, please?
Well, I think the answer is that overall our pass rates have gone up significantly. So irrespective of how the student got into the course, what basis they were admitted, they are all doing much better. And so they are passing and their grades are better. And the other thing that we haven't talked about is they actually come to class. You know, we're getting 90% attendance rates at all of our classes, and who would have guessed? The pass rates have gone up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean and Andrew, for your presentation.